Okay, so we are in Vienna now. We just checked into this Annelies Kaiserin whatever hotel. It's kind of weird. It's got this double door, so you almost have like a foyer. Anyways, let's see. Hola.
Hola.
So this is our suite. As soon as you come in, off to the right side is the restroom. At least I like the design a little bit better. It's got one of these half bath, half shower deals. Not as retarded as some of the other ones. This one, the floor actually stays dry if you take a shower. It's got a double sink, vanity mirror, it's got the blow dryer, separate toilet area. Pretty nice. When we first got into the room, the air conditioner was acting up, but we had maintenance come in and fix it.
Hello.
Hello. So this is the room. This is the master. Hopefully this is more comfortable than the last bed. It wasn't that comfortable. Angelina's place. The air conditioner that's now blowing very cold air, thank God.
Hola.
And then it's got quite a big closet. Plenty of space to put some like shoe luggage.
That one I can't get open.
Okay.
That one open. Other way.
Supposedly.
The other way. Other way. There you go. Turn it.
Okay, well, obviously I'm retarded. Whatever, I don't care. Yes, there is places to put and hang stuff. Yeah. So we went to the palace earlier today. The camera got screwed up. I didn't format the camera, so only half the video is on that video. Tomorrow we have a couple other places to go to, depending on how busy we want to be. Because Friday morning early, we get on the plane to go back to Vegas. So just depends on how crazy we want to get, because we're definitely going to have to go to bed early tomorrow night so that we can get up early and be out of here early as well. So that's about it. We will see you guys probably tomorrow and film some of the palaces and stuff that we're going to go to. So y'all have a good night. Bye. Okay, we are at the Hofburg Palace, aka CC Museum. I guess it's got multiple parts to it. Huh? Yeah. What the fuck? Who's that?
My name's Lily, I'm your guide. It takes approximately 1 hour. We start in the Sissi Museum and then we go into the apartments. And please scan the barcode and we enter and we start now. Just 1 second, please. Thank you. So, do you want to keep it as a souvenir?
Sure.
Okay, we go in this direction, into the first room. And we see a model of the Hofburg Palace. The Hofburg Palace used to be the winter residence and the center of government. So from September till about Easter, here lived the sovereign with his closest family. So his parents, his wife and his children. Not the whole House of Habsburg, because although there are 2,600 rooms, not the whole House of Habsburg had room here. Only certain relatives with high-ranking positions at court had guest rooms when they stayed in Vienna. So the building history spans 800 years. The oldest part is this little courtyard, the Swiss courtyard. It was built between the 13th and the 15th century, and it's named after the Swiss Guard who did their duty protecting the castle during the time of Maria Theresa in the 18th century. Today, the Swiss Guard is in the Vatican protecting the Pope. We are in a rather modern part of the palace, the so-called Imperial Chancellery Wing, this long part here, which used to house the offices of the Holy Roman Empire. But in 1806, the Holy Roman Empire disbanded because Napoleon stormed to Europe and demanding a new order of Europe, and it dissolved the empire. So these rooms were empty. We can't have that. We have to use each and every room. So the first part was used as guest rooms for high-ranking relatives, and the second half was used in the second half of the 19th century for the rooms for the Emperor Francis Joseph. All the emperors before him, his grandfather, his uncle, all his ancestors, had the offices and rooms in this part, in the parallel part, in the so-called Leopold's wing or reigning wing. And today's president has his office here as well. So we do know the state Austria took reference after Empire Austria. And we are in this part. Where used to be guest rooms is today's Sissi Museum. And we look at the rooms of the Emperor Francis Joseph, which are still quite luxurious and beautiful, but practical. And nothing compared to the Baroque luxuries of the 18th century, because he showed himself as quite a practical, low-key emperor, quite close to his people, because in the 19th century you can't parade your luxury and your richness around. You have to show, I'm doing my money's worth. I actually work hard, so not another revolution breaks out and puts him away from the throne. And with the emperor, we start in the more public rooms, the audience room, the conference room, the study. And the deeper we go, the more private the rooms become. So the study and the bedroom are private areas. The Emperor Francis Joseph was married to Empress Elizabeth. They had separate apartments, separate bedrooms, but the apartments were together in the middle, connected. So with the Empress, we go around the corner and start in the most private rooms of the Empress. The bedroom, the toilet and exercising room, the bathroom with the toilet, and end in the more public rooms, the audience rooms. So we do know they are connected and they meet in the middle. And you exit opposite of the Chancellery. Again, the state Austria took reference from the monarchy because the chancelleries of the monarchy were housed here since their building was built in the start of the 18th century. And you have here the People's Garden, the Volksgarten, and the Palace Garden, the Burggarten. Both are products of the 19th century, as well as the Art History Museum and the Natural Art History Museum, and really the whole Ringstrasse, the beautiful big street with all the villas lining it. Because everything would be impossible hadn't Napoleon marched to Europe and destroyed the city wall. Originally, Vienna was just the first district, rather small and cramped, and he destroyed the city wall, and made space for enlargement of the city, and all the outer districts were added to the city center. So actually we have to thank him for something. So you have a small oversight what we are about to see. We would now enter the Sisi Museum. So don't be alarmed. The Sisi Museum begins and enters with the death of the Empress. It's quite dark, the walls, the ceiling, everything is black. And if you look straight on, you see what appears to be a death mask, but it isn't. Death masks weren't a practice among the Habsburgs because they tried it one time with Francis Joseph, and they did such a bad job with it that when they tried to put it off, they nearly took the schnauzer with them.
Oh no.
So that's why it's never exhibited, because there's still a bit of hair stuck in the inside.
Oh wow.
So we do see it's not a practice of the House of Habsburg. It's more like a piece of remembrance for the descendants. So Elizabeth and Francis Joseph had 4 children together, 3 daughters and 1 son. So the eldest daughter Sophie tragically died at 2 years old. The second daughter Gisela did her duty at 16 years and married her Bavarian cousin, had 4 children. The only son and heir, Rudolf, died at 31 with only 1 daughter, so actually the male line of Emperor Francis Joseph died out. The next emperor in line was then his grandnephew, because the daughters and their children weren't eligible. You could have tried, like with Maria Theresa, but there was quite a bit of conflict inside, and they feared revolutions are breaking out, because 19th century, the end of the monarchies reared its head, so they had to be careful. And the youngest daughter, Marie Valerie, the favorite, but we will talk about that later, was allowed to marry out of love and had 10 children. So the 2 surviving daughters and the 15 grandchildren for these descendants was this piece of remembrance, and apparently it is bears quite a good resemblance to the Empress. So we see she has quite a doll-like face. Over there we have actual historical photographs of her funeral train, and over there we have pictures how the people imagined the Empress's funeral to go. We have an open casket, the grieved widower kneeling before it, lots of flowers. We do know there were lots of flowers. He was deeply grieved by the loss of his wife, but there wasn't an open casket because she died at 10th of September 1898, and it isn't advisable because it takes a few days to bring the body back from Geneva to Austria to display an open casket in the 19th century heat. We now go further into the so-called Blue Hallway. It used to be a servants' hallway. And we see the imagination of the people furthered the myth of Elizabeth growing, and it never actually stopped, because still today there's a fascination about her. So left and right we have newspaper articles about her. You will not find a single negative word written about the family from the time of the monarchy, because there was the strictest censure. Not anything negative written about the monarchy was scrapped. No, can't publish that. So during her lifetime, she was hardly ever in the newspapers, because she was hardly ever there. You weren't allowed to write anything negative about that. So you sometimes told, yeah, she's at a spa treatment there because she has gout in her fingers, and there she's traveling there, and there she's traveling there, but not anything further. The articles surrounding her death center around her husband, because he already lost his younger brother, his only son and heir, 1889, and now his wife, and he never married again. And Elizabeth was hardly here in Vienna. She was, at the end of her life, combined maybe 2 months per year in Vienna. Francis Joseph was always here, from September till Easter here at Hofburg, in the summer at the summer residence Schönbrunn, and his birth month August. He was born 18th of August 1830. He spent in Bad Ischl because his parents had the duty to provide the next generation, and his mother Sophie had difficulties in getting pregnant. So she went to Bad Ischl, took salt baths as treatment, and would you know it, four princes consecutively were born. And these princes had the nickname the Salt Princes because they were born due to the salt baths. So the whole family had quite a tight connection to Bad Ischl. And so he's either here in Schönbrunn or in Bad Ischl. always here. And he was on the throne for 68 years. So for many people in his empire, it was unimaginable a life without the good old emperor on the throne. You wouldn't have imagined that when he got on the throne 1848 at 18 years old, because 1848 was the revolution all over the empire. And they put a bloody end to the revolution, so there was a throne to inherit. And he was hugely unpopular when he first got on the throne. There were many assassination attempts on his life, but the longer he was on the throne, he portrayed himself as a hard-working monarch. I do actually do my job, I like my job. He portrayed himself close to his people. So the sentiment around him changed, and he became the good old emperor. Similar, maybe like Queen Elizabeth of Great Britain. You might not like the Commonwealth, but you do acknowledge she's hardworking, she does her job. And the tragedy surrounding the death of Elizabeth, they made use of that, producing a lot of memorabilia, originally only surrounding her funeral, but they sold so well that they never really stopped producing them. Still, when you exit, you will find in the shop a lot of products with her name and her face on it, because these products sell really, really well. So here we have beer mugs and coffee mugs, even scissors and a lot of coins with her profile on it. Everything with her name and face on it sold really well, and it's good for the money of the state. The bank of the state had a need of money, so they sold a lot of products with her face on it, and they also managed to enhance the profile of the empire. They produced a lot of statues and monuments of the empress. We will see the dress from the other side as well, and had them put up all over the empire. So we go further. We see works in progress for these monuments. And one really popular statue, we can go over there. So we see a life-size statue of the empress. We do know she was 172 centimeters tall, quite tall for anybody her time, but especially a lady. She was in fact taller than her husband. You wouldn't imagine that. He was 168 centimeters, so 4 or 5 centimeters he was taller, so about this one. Wow. But when they are depicted together, the empress is sitting, the emperor standing behind her, or even if they're standing together, of course the emperor is taller than his wife.
Right, so he has to
we don't know what they did, but
I'm sure
they made him taller.
Yeah.
We don't know how much she weighed, but we have waist belts between 50 and 55 centimeters. So we can surmise she didn't weigh a whole lot, but she had tiny advantage of genetics. Her whole family, the Wittelsbachers, the Bavarian kingdom family, king's family, was quite tall and quite thin. And as they grew older, they even grew thinner. And she did work with this advantage. She was quite peculiar in her diet, and some days she only ate fruit. Some days she only drank milk. When she partook in a state banquet with multiple courses, the next day she only drank beef bone broth for sustenance. And also she did exercise every day. In the first few years of her life, daily riding exercises. Later, when she had to give that up due to health reasons, she started fencing, mile-long walks, and gymnastics. And we have the long hair. At the time of her death, it grew to her ankles in braids at the top of her head, so it wasn't too heavy. And we do know she didn't say no to everything nice in life. We do know she had quite a sweet tooth, a penchant for sweets and confectionery, because we have quite a lot of receipts in the archives. And we have to remember the silhouette of the 19th century was a small waist. You were in a corset from a small age on. You had lots of petticoats and huge puffed sleeves. So the waist in comparison looks even smaller. So we have to look at it in the context of the time and the style. As we walk on, we see left and right actual depictions of the monuments all over Europe. And if we go further, we see depictions of biographies, biopics, and films about the empress. That starts really, really early, in the 1920s. So the black and white movies from the 1920s and the 1930s show the Empress as an older lady wearing black and a bit melancholic. So how actual people who knew her saw her. The happy-go-lucky Empress, the romance, is a product of the 1950s with Romy Schneider, the Christmas movies. And why is that? Well, maybe after the Second World War there was a yearning for romance, for happiness, for something positive. And maybe for telling the Austrians, who are we apart from Germany after the Second World War? Oh, we used to have a huge empire with a beautiful empress at top. Is there anything more positive? But now we go around the corner of the corridor and wander from fiction back to fact and look at the childhood of the Empress. So Elizabeth was a Christmas baby. She was born 24th of December, 1837. We look first to the left side and look at her childhood. So she was born in a side branch of the Bavarian kingdom. Her grandfather was the Bavarian king. So her mother was a Bavarian princess, the only of the 9 daughters of the king, who neither married an emperor nor a king, only a distant cousin, a duke in Bavaria. So not even the duke, only a duke in Bavaria. So in forms of hierarchy, she was quite above him, which she might have told him, which might be why the marriage was quite unhappy. Nevertheless, they had 8 children together, and these children had quite a happy, free and conventional childhood, which might have made her the person she was, but it didn't prepare her well for her future role as empress. So here we have her father, Duke Max in Bavaria, and her mother, Ludovica. So Elizabeth was quite close with all her siblings. She had 3 brothers and 4 sisters, and they all had nicknames for each other. So Helen, the eldest sister, was called Nene. Elizabeth was called Sissi. And Sophie, the baby of the family, was called Spatz, which is sparrow. So all had quite cute nicknames for each other. When your aunts are empresses and queens of Europe, you yourself have quite a good chance of having a good marriage match. One of the aunts was Archduchess Sophie, the mother of the Austrian emperor. So when the emperor celebrated his 23rd birthday, of course in Badischl, here we have the background, Ludovica traveled there with her eldest 2 daughters, Helen and Elizabeth. Officially, the emperor, of course, had the choice. Unofficially, the 2 mothers thought Helen would make a really good empress. We low-key prepared her for that all her life. And maybe one of the younger brothers for Sissi. She's only 15, we don't have any stress. Of course, you plan and life intervenes. The emperor fell in love at first sight with the 15-year-old Sissi. 3 days later, on his birthday, the 18th of August, he proposed and they had their engagement celebration. So nobody knew this tomboy from Bavaria what to do. They produced these porcelain statues and sent them all over the empire. You will note the empress is either sitting or depicted smaller than her husband, but she was already taller. And the bust over there in the corner was sent to Vienna, so the Viennese court can have an inkling about the future empress. So they celebrated their engagement in August and married the following April. Elizabeth was then at least 16 years old, and they used these few months to cram as much education as possible in her head and supplement as best as they could her dowry, because her dowry was lacking, her education was lacking, her lineage wasn't pristine enough because her paternal grandmother wasn't up to the standard, and she's shy and not really considered a beauty. So her start at the Viennese court was quite difficult. And of course, behind every door it's a servant listening to you, no privacy at all. Each and every interaction was ruled by the Spanish court etiquette. And Elizabeth was used to free and conventional life. She hated it here. And Francis Joseph grew up that way. And of course, everybody is nice to the emperor. Nobody talks badly behind his back. He didn't know what the problem was. But we will go into the next room and look at courtly life more particularly. So I will raise my left arm so you don't lose me. I'm not the tallest. It's quite difficult sometimes. And we look at the white and green dress So the white and green dress is the so-called Polterabendkleid. In English we would say the bachelorette dress. In reality, she wore it at her last evening in Munich. She didn't really have a bachelorette party per se, because that's not for people her status. This dress, unfortunately, is a copy. The original is still here, but in too bad of a condition to be shown. That happens all the time with dresses, because the cloth, the material is too fine to really last a long time. A lot of silk, a lot of lace and everything. And lots of her dresses she wore a few times, and then she gave it away to her relatives. And the special dresses, like the crown dress, the wedding dress, the ball gowns, they donated to churches, and they put it apart and make the clothing from priests out of it. It is a huge shame, but we do see the tight connection between the House of Habsburg and the Catholic Church from it. So it also happened with her wedding dress. So life at court started, and she was quite unhappy. We see on the mirrors and the tablecloths, on the tapestry on the walls, excerpts of her poetry. She writes about a dungeon, about chains. She didn't really like it here. But she did her main duty. At 16 she married. At 17 she gave birth to her first child, Sophie. At 18 to her second child, Gisela. And then the constant fighting with her mother-in-law, who was coincidentally also her aunt, started, because Sophie thought, Sissi is busy enough being empress, learning to be empress. I will take over the child-rearing. And Sissi wanted to be an active mother, and Francis Joseph stood between them. The conflict had a quite tragic endpoint. Elizabeth insisted on taking both daughters at the traveling route to Hungary. Both children fell ill, and the eldest daughter, Sophie, died. And both Francis Joseph and Sophie and Elizabeth never really recovered from that. Elizabeth came home, gave Gisela to the grandmother, certain the child is better off with the grandmother because she doesn't know what she's doing. She caused the death of her eldest child. And so it was also at 20, after a difficult birth, she gave the only son and heir, Rudolph, to the grandmother. And she took a really long time recovering. And the doctors said she has to leave to a warmer climate, and she left the court to Madeira for 2 years. She wasn't allowed to take her children with her, and when she returned, the children didn't recognize her. At a later time, she developed a relationship with them, but they were always closer to the grandmother because she was there during their formative years. But it doesn't mean she didn't love them. Away from court, she realized she's beautiful, she has an effect on men, and she can use this effect to her advantage. At 28, we see her at the height of her beauty, in the star dress with the diamond stars in the hair. All the jewelry on the portraits of Elizabeth, you see copies in the showcase over there. The originals are not open to the public. The rubies and the Hungarian jewels went with the last emperor into exile, and we don't know what happened to them. It's either stolen, in the safe, or took apart and sold. We don't know. The diamond stars, there were two kinds, one with a pearl in the middle, one solely from diamonds. The one with the pearls she gave away to everybody, to her ladies-in-waiting, her grandchildren, her servants, and they are all over Europe. About 7 we know where they are, owned by private collectors. One of them is in a museum, we see it later. The second variant with the diamonds was part of the dowry of one of her grandchildren. So at the height of her beauty, she used the beauty to issue her husband an ultimatum. I don't have to stay in Vienna if I don't want to. And I have the last word in education of the children. Because since the 6th birthday of the Crown Prince, he was brought up like a little soldier. So he was woken up by gunshots, and he had to march for hours in every weather, scorching sun or pouring rain, with all the soldiers, which wasn't good for the mental health of a 6-year-old child. Elizabeth said, say yes to both points or I will leave you. Emperor Francis Joseph fell in love at first sight with her, had a lifelong fascination for her, because she's free, she's unconventional, she's everything he didn't know. He couldn't say no anyway, and of course was afraid of scandal as well. So for his luck, she only intervened one time politically, for Hungary. So 1848, a lot of revolutions all over Europe, also in Hungary. And they lost a lot of their rights from the constitution because of that. And in 1867, due to Elizabeth's involvement, there was four kings, and the Austrian Empire turned into the double monarchy, Austrian Empire, Hungarian Kingdom. So everywhere around the first district you see at a lot of masonries and confectionaries the K&K Lieferant. So K&K, kaiserlich königlich, and Imperial and Empire and Kingdom, and they were merchants for the court, and that was the highest label you could have, so they still display that proudly on their facades of the shops. If you turn around, you see a copy of the Hungarian crown dress. On the back wall you see a crown portrait. They were crowned King and Queen of Hungary. Based on these portraits and photographs, this dress was reconstructed because, you guessed it, the original was given to the Hungarian church. The copy weighs 14 kilograms, so we do know she wore it for the ceremony, for the portraits and the photographs, and then she changed into a lighter robe. At 30, she was crowned Queen of Hungary. At 31, she gave birth to her last child, Marie Valerie. And this time she put her foot down. She was an active mother in her last child's life. And the court mockingly called her the only one, because that's the only child she cared about, which wasn't the truth at all. At 30, she was able to put her foot down, a thing she wasn't able to do at 20. So she loved all her children. She was perhaps more able to show it to Marie Valerie than the eldest two surviving children. After the birth of the last child, she didn't let herself be photographed anymore. And at 42, this was the last portrait she was a model for the silver wedding celebrations. Because she wanted to be remembered as a beautiful young woman. I think she did manage that because she died at 60 years of age. But when I think of her, I see her here with the diamonds in the hair at 28 years old. The next part of the museum is a bit cramped, a bit dark. We will speed run through that. The next rooms are like this one, more open. So we walk past. Thank you. So a lot of distractions from courtly life. One of them was the riding sport. So she did a lot of riding sport, and she was a really gifted rider, equestrian. She took part in a lot of par-force hunting trips, which is a kind of English hunt with a lot of dogs, and quite a dangerous sport. She took one or two quite dangerous falls, and in the 1880s she had to give it up because she developed gout in her fingers due to the beef bone broth on her fasting days. And she couldn't hold herself tightly enough in the side saddle. But she did start then with gymnastics, fencing, and mile-long walks. Okay, we will squeeze past. Excuse me, can you let us through? Excuse me, sorry. Okay, I will have my left arm in the air so you will see me, and we will try to walk past the group. It's unfortunately a bit difficult. Okay, we will go past that one, yeah. Normally the people make room for the groups, but not all the tourists. So, we walk further to the beauty showcase. We have a lot of beauty recipes in the archives, and there you will also see the milk glass where she drank out of her milk on her milk days, because she was known as Violets, a lot of white, and from a young age on a lot of black, because she looked really, really good in black. And of course, after the loss of her son, she almost exclusively wore black to show her grief over the loss. But it was also a practice of the 19th century to wear at least 1 year long grieving clothing after a close relative died. But here we have the blue and white traveling dress, so sometimes she wore outside of the monarchy still a splash of color. And in the showcase over there we see a diamond star with a pearl in the middle, the only one we were able to buy from private collectors. So, as we further go, we see on our right side a lot of grieving accessories. So a lot of fans and parasols and everything. And these she used to hide her face when she was traveling. And the group was coming to her and trying to take photos of her. So she put her fan before her face or lowered her parasol so you wouldn't see her face. Because she hated to be stared at. Excuse me, sorry. She hated to be stared at. And that's why she really hated the crown residences. So the Hofburg Palace and the Schönbrunn Palace were crown residences, and they were owned by the public, by the crown, and so they weren't able to be inherited by the daughters and their children. They went to the next emperor. The private residences were able to inherit. For instance, the Achilleon was given to Gisela. Achilleon is a villa in the classicist style at Corfu. Originally it was quite nice. Yes, we will walk past and then you have your quiet. So the Achilleon was a classicist villa. And it was a huge expense. Originally there was a small villa built on it. And she had the palace built instead. Huge project. She spent the first night inside and then she said, no, I want to sell it. The building process shoot away the magic of the place. So as she grew older, it was quite hard to please her, and she arrived at one traveling destination. She wanted to pack up and leave again. So that's why she mostly traveled by train or by boat, because that's the easiest and fastest way to go. And she was able to travel incognito, because this original train carriage, this one is a copy, looked like any other train carriage from the outside. Inside here you have still practicality but luxury as well. The original is at the Technical Museum in Vienna, but there you can only look in the window if you stand on your toes, so here you can really see it. We now go to the left and we go into the last room of the Sisi Museum. So imagine we are in Geneva, part of the entourage of the Empress. The Empress traveled under her lesser title, the Countess of Hohenems, which was a usual practice among monarchs to travel under your lesser title, because when an Empress visits a city, there has to be a huge state banquet. When a Countess visits, when everybody knew she was the Empress, you be polite to her, but you don't have to make such a fuss. So at the same time, Luigi Lucchini, an anarchist, was also in Geneva, and his original plan was to kill the Duke of Orleans to show the discrepancy between rich and poor. The Duke changed his travel itinerary in the last moment, and what to do? For his luck, he read the next morning in the newspaper, due to a hotel staff being paid off, who the Countess at Grand Hotel Beau Rivage really was. So the Empress planned to leave the city this morning. The majority of her staff was already sent away by train. She planned to leave by boat with one of her ladies in waiting. Just as she was about to get on the boat, Lucchini ran to her and stabbed her with a sharpened file in the chest. Then he ran away. The Empress went to the ground. The people surrounding apprehended him and brought him to the police. The Empress got up, quite flabbergasted. What happened? Did he shove me? Did he punch me? Did he try to steal my purse? What happened? But I don't want to miss the boat. I get on. On the boat, she loses consciousness. They open the corset and see the small wound. In the showcase over there in the right upper corner, you see a photograph of the dress she wore. The boat turned around, they brought her back into her hotel, and with the travel apothecary in the left lower corner, they gave her first aid. And there is, for our eyes, a quite peculiar object inside, a cocaine syringe. Cocaine was prescribed in the 19th century for menopausal and menstruation problems. So we do know it was prescribed to the Empress. We don't know the dosage she took or if she took it at all. So they gave her first aid, but it was too late. Her heart was punctured, and she slowly bled to death in the next hour. The showcase as well, we have the death note, the autopsy report, and her last will. And now the fighting between Geneva and Austria started, because of course Emperor Francis Joseph wanted to hang the murderer of his wife, but Switzerland insisted on lifelong dungeon. Switzerland won, and he was sentenced to lifelong dungeon, but he didn't survive long in a Swiss dungeon. In 1898 he killed the Empress. 1910 hanged himself in his cell. So at last, 12 years too late, Emperor Francis Joseph got his wish. Only a small triumph of this. We now are finished with the Sissi Museum. We now enter the apartment. It's much easier here because it's not as full anymore. So now we are in the antechamber of the emperor. So through this door came the emperor and everybody the emperor visited, who visited the emperor. And here the palace guard, the Trabanten, that's why Trabantenstube, did a sort of security check. Because on Mondays and Thursdays, a lot of people came in for here. Because Mondays and Thursdays, there were public audiences. Emperor Francis Joseph had issued in the newspapers when the public audiences would be, and every person of his empire had the right to schedule an appointment with the emperor. All they had to do was write a letter, and with the answer, they came in here. And the palace guard checked, are they on the list? Do they have the answer?
Later, this tried to escort that damaged the kilometers, and they had a war with their Jesus. It didn't work really well, and it was 40 degrees Celsius. Originally, although it was they were additional features installed in this portrait is the last portrait of the Crown Prince Rudolph. So, during the monarchy, all the people knew he died at the hunting lodge Miami. Nobody knew why. Was it a hunting accident, a carriage accident, a bathing accident? Did he drown? No, he was sick. No, it was an assassination. Lots of rumors. It was a big state funeral, and he was interred in the captain's crypt next to his family. He died in 1889. 1918, the monarchy ended. In the 1920s, the truth came out. He went there with his 18-year-old mistress, Mary Vetera, killed first her with a bullet to the head, and then herself. Suicide is the biggest sin of the Catholic Church, and you weren't allowed to be interred in holy ground, so they covered it. The reasons might be multiple. He wasn't really close to his parents. He was liberal, despite of his traditionalist, so he wasn't allowed to partake in the government, but he was the next in line. So he was sort of an apprentice, but he didn't learn the job. And he had a child, but only a daughter, because his marriage was arranged. Of course, they weren't quite happy, but after a few years, it cooled off. And he sought solace in the red light district. He brought in an illness, infected his wife, and his wife grew infertile due to that. So no chance at all for a legitimate male heir for him. So because of Rudolph, the male line of Francis Joseph died out, which might have made the relationship between father and son even more hard. And of course, his the original family of his mother, and both grandmothers, because they were sisters, were the Wittelsbachs, and they were known to be a bit, so to say. So there might have been a multitude of reasons. So we have the loss of the wife, the loss of the son, the loss of the younger brother in the 1860s. So 3 younger brothers. The second eldest, Frederick Max, didn't really have a role in the empire. So Francis Joseph was the heir, Frederick Max was the spare. So he didn't really have a role. He tried, but he belatedly jumped at the chance when William III and the self-dated ministry offered him the Mexican Imperial crown, because they wanted a European old house at the top to secure their interests. So they offered him the crown. His wife, Charlotte, the Princess of Belgium, badgered him to accept it because she didn't want to curtsy anymore for her sister-in-law, who was only the Duchess in Bavaria. She, the king's daughter, had to curtsy. So he accepted. Here is Max. He went to Mexico, and then Napoleon III and the South States of the USA left, and he was alone with the people who didn't want a European leader on the throne, but they did leave him a choice. either give up the throne or die as the emperor. But he already gave up the title of archduke to get the imperial crown. If he gave up the emperor's title now, would he be a commoner? No, he would rather die as an emperor. And so he did 1867. Afterwards, his body was brought back to Vienna. The title of archduke was reissued, so he could be interred in the capital with his parents. It was really all for naught, but it showed how they couldn't imagine a life without a title. This room was originally the smoker's room, where the gentlemen after dinner smoked their cigars and pipes, because you wouldn't smoke in the presence of a lady. But nobody told that to Empress Elizabeth. She was herself a pipe smoker, but she was hugely criticized for it. We are now at the end of the apartment of the Emperor. When he wanted to visit his wife, he had to ring the bell, and she either opened the door or not. Behind the door, at the height of the doorknob, is a simple electric bell. It's not functioning anymore because the visitors keep pressing it. So imagine you're the emperor, you press the bell, and either a court lady comes, welcome. Oh no, the empress is sick, or the empress is unavailable, and closes the door again, and you have to leave again. So the empress always had access to the rooms of the emperor. The emperor had to ring the bell, so we know who had the higher rank in the marriage.
Right. The only hallway.
At 3:30. The empress in summer at 5, in winter at 6. He would keep her. And the bed of the empress has a special feature. It's also a metal bed, but this one can be put together and taken with you when you travel. Because you never know when the hotels last changed the sheets or if there are bed bugs.
You want a term for that kind of bed?
I don't know the English word.
Oh, okay.
So they were imported from England.
Yeah.
They were the highest form of technology there, because the original beds with all the canopies and everything were quite dusty and hard to clean. And so they imported these beds, and they had the special feature to put them together, because in the Middle Ages there weren't really permanent residences for the monarchs. They traveled from castle to castle and had canopies and everything hanging off the walls, and later kind of a reimagined version of this one is the bed of the empress. We can see an open fireplace and 2 heaters, and if we keep walking we see openings in the walls between. So, an open fireplace? No, still too cold. I complained to my father, and he tells me these 2 heaters. No, still too cold. I want an open warm air heating system installed. So they did. So this room was the warmest in the whole palace. All the other rooms were about 14 degrees. Here were between 16 and 18 degrees. Still not warm, but at least you stop shivering with the tea. This room originally had a few personal artifacts inside, but they went with her descendants when she died. She didn't really spend a lot of time in Vienna, so all the rooms are quite unpersonal. And the furniture you see here looks like it's here. The reason is why it's so plain. Originally it was red cloth adorned with golden strings. And it's reconstructed at the moment, and it takes a really long time. So that we see furniture in underwear because it's a work in progress. The whole museum is. Here you see how the museum is. And at the moment they have to really work on it and make it from scratch, because as they did 150 years ago, we had to produce this the same way. In this chair, you would sit with your huge dresses with crinolines and down underneath, so you can rest your arm there and really sit down. So that's why all the chairs are a bit wider, so the crinoline was possible. So this room was semi-public. During the day, she put up a wall divider to hide the bed, and it used as a living room. The next room was her toilet and exercising room. So her language teacher had access to him over there. So it was also kind of public, but still a bit private. So the Empress had a gym, a personal gym. It was behind here, but today it's lost to history. So when she didn't have any appointment, she didn't have any stress, she did at least 1 hour exercising in the personal gym. If she didn't have much time, if she did have an appointment or anything, the least she would do was 20 minutes gymnastic exercises with the basic instruments you see in the next rooms. Maybe you will be able to see the rings in the doorway. There she hung from and swung and jumped over a rope.
Wow.
In corset and in a dress with feathers on it. So quite an accomplishment. We do know that from the autobiography of one of her language teachers. So as we slowly inch forward, there's a small pathway, that's why it's the traffic jam inside, in her bed, in the toilet room, in the bathroom and the wardrobe. So it's a bit slowly, and I'm so sorry it's already 11 o'clock. Do you have any stress?
No, we're okay.
No, we're good.
I'm really sorry, I wouldn't have imagined.
You are fine.
You're fine.
That it's so full. Imagine in the summer you get up at 5 in the morning, in the winter at 6. First, you do an hour exercise or at least 20 minutes. Afterwards, you wash yourself at the toilet desk because she had a bathroom, but the bathroom is the place for spa treatments. The hygiene took place at the toilet desk.
There's her ring.
Yeah.
When she cleaned herself, she had an hour-long massage on her massage bed. Then she headed to the bathroom and had an hour-long session in the bathroom. So a cream bath, a beer bath, a steam bath. Afterwards, she went here to her coiffeuse, to a hairdresser. In 1 or 2 hours, had her hair done. This time she used to learn languages, read or answer letters. Over there sat her language teacher. In the first few years she learned Hungarian, later ancient and New Greek, because she was a huge fan of the ancient myths and wanted to read them in the original.
What is the ladder looking thing?
You climbed on it and then from behind, and then you pulled herself.
Oh.
We have that in all the schools. Sprossenhand. I'm not quite sure what the English...
Pull up.
Yeah.
Pull up.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Look around you at all the pictures.
Yeah.
Similar as Frances Joseph. She had in the room where she spent most of her time pictures of the people and things closest to her. So her horses, thick and flock. Her dogs. She always had 6 or 7 huge dog breeds with her. And her children. Marie Valerie, Rudolph and Gisela with the braids. But her husband, the hunter. But the majority of the pictures here in this room are on this wall, and they are neither the children nor the husband, they are the siblings. So what does that say about the state of the marriage? If the husband has his wife, his mother and his children all over here, in the rooms where he spent the most time, and the wife has small pictures of Heinrich Heine and her dogs and her siblings and parents, then of her husband and her children. I will let either of you decide on your own. Maybe the pink glasses aren't that tight in the fridge after 40 years.
Right.
As we go into the bathroom, you see one of the first water closets of the house. Apparently, it's in the shape of a dolphin, but I simply don't see it. It looks like any kind of fish.
It sounds like our hotel.
Right?
And also she had every 3 weeks. It took the whole day because first she washed it with a mixture of cognac and egg yolks. Then afterwards she washed out the eggs with vinegar. And to get rid of the vinegar smell, she washed it with rose water. And then it took the whole day to dry the ankle length hair. And originally the tapestry was quite damaged. Steam. So this is how it looked originally, but we restored it so you can imagine how it was really nice. So after the bathing and the hair and everything, here is the wardrobe. So one room she used to get dressed, and one room she used to keep her wardrobe. You see, issued by Kaiser in the 18th century. Originally as rooms for her eldest son, but their presumptive quickly turned into the emperor. And these rooms, as pretty as they are simply too small for the emperor, so they weren't really used. And Empress Elizabeth had here long ceiling-high bedrooms, standing sections in the So here is almost good access to the bathroom, the wardrobe and everything. The next rooms are for receiving people. So a lot more people have access to the next rooms. But it's a fantastic landscape because Bonnie next to watermelon, not really realistic. You might have taken the artist Bergel might have taken inspiration from the zoo, the Palace Zoo, one of the oldest in Europe, where he saw a lot of the birds. And over here is one of the heating hallways, because behind this wall is the heater for the big saloon of the Empress. A reading room and an audience room. In the audience room, she sometimes had breakfast with her husband around 9 in the morning, which was sometimes the only time these two had alone together to really talk about reading. There is also the choice she made one of the dogs with her and looked how the dog reacted to the new lady in waiting. Did he growl and be unpleasant? Thank you, but no thank you. I don't think we match well. If the dog remains calm in the presence of the lady in waiting, maybe laid to her feet. Welcoming my servants, I like you very much because my dog is a better judge of character than the people at court who want to give me new lady in waiting. And she also had quite a lot of fun walking with a huge group of dogs. In 1906 or 7, big brief like day, yes. Walking with the Empress. You do your job as a servant and open the door, and there's the Empress with 6 dogs there. You get the fright of the day, and the Empress found it really fun. So here is the waiting room. You have to wait to be called to be left to the Empress. This is how the Emperor would have the engagement to the Empress, 23 years old. Kind of fetching in later years, slowly the hair in backwards, and he lost a bit of the Prince Charming, or I think. In 1946. Because that was when the first president of the Second Republic, the Austrian state, took office around the corner in the Leopoldsweg. So this was the access to there, and these rooms at this point in time were already used as a museum. So the visitor would walk into the office of the emperor, of the head of state, of the president. They put up this wall. Why they do such? Because in job with it, I can't imagine. There's also used to be the access to the Leopoldsweg and to the staircase of the Empress, the Eagle staircase. We now have 3 more rooms to go and we're finished. We can exit now the apartment of the Empress and enter into the Alexander. We don't exactly know what it's called, by the way. There is originally it was supposed to be printing of Alexander the Great. So, whichever theory you prefer, you pick because we can sit for 100%. This room used to be the study of the last emperor. So, in which relationship stood he to Emperor Franz Joseph, you might ask? We remember the 4 sole princes. So, that Franz Joseph, the eldest, only had Rudolf, who didn't have a son, so this line dies out. The second, Ferdinand Max, dies in Mexico without any sons, so this line dies out as well. And looking how Ludwig, the 3rd son, had 2 sons, roughly. Franz Ferdinand was the next in line, but he was only married to the Countess of Vichotec. So the children from this marriage weren't eligible for the throne, but at least they have the next emperor. Because he never thought, as the eldest son of the 3rd son, that he would one day be emperor, so he could marry out of love. Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie died 1914 at Sarajevo, and this assassination was the reason for the First World War. So the search for succession had to start again because the younger brother of Franz Ferdinand, Otto, was already dead by then. He died before Francis Joseph. So what now? Luckily, Otto had a son, Karl, and luckily Karl was married appropriately to Zita von Bourbon-Parma, so the children were eligible. So the grand-nephew of Francis Joseph was the next and the last emperor. So they had to search quite hard to find a male in the male line who was eligible. He refused to accept the end of the monarchy and was sent into exile. As long as they don't accept and sign away their titles, they aren't allowed to step foot in the country. For comparison, he lost all his wealth. For comparison, his cousin, Marie Valerie, the youngest daughter of Francis Joseph, signed away her title, accepted the end of the monarchy, was allowed to keep all her money and property. Her descendants from her 10 children are still under the top 5 landowners of Austria. So she might have given up her title, but not her inheritance.
She did good.
The French king, because Joseph visited his sister, Marie Antoinette, in France, because after 7 years of marriage, she was neither pregnant nor had a child. What's the problem? There are many theories. Historians are arguing still. Either we don't know for sure, we didn't like marriage with them. Either it was a physical defect with one or two, a mental problem with one or two, barrier kind of, or they simply didn't know what to do. They married when they were 14 and 15 years old. We don't know if they ever had to talk, how to get pregnant, what to do to get pregnant. So we don't know what happened during the visit of Joseph II. Either he convinced his brother-in-law to have an operation, or he had to talk with him, we don't know. A few months after his visit, his sister was finally pregnant and gave birth to a child, only a daughter, but finally he was a father. So Louis gifted his brother-in-law these tapestries because he was elated to be finally a father. And she gave birth to 3 other children, 2 of them were sons. But then the French Revolution came and we planned for a son, and then history comes and it ruins everything. So here sat the emperor. The closer you sat to the emperor, the higher you were in rank. And if it was ladies and gentlemen present, it was always emperor, the daughter-in-law, gentleman, lady, and gentleman. You were only allowed to talk with the people left and right from you, never across the table. Because with 18 people, that would be much too much noise. They used silver plates and silver cutlery. Over here, why is it turned around and everything on the right side? We turned it around to show you the double-headed eagle, the sigil of the House of Hofburg, which was printed. It's a usual practice among higher houses because you never know, the cutlery is cleaned outside of the palace walls, and to prevent thievery and confusion, they printed their sigil on it. Why is it on the right side? We have 2 theories, we can't say for sure, we picked the one we like best. It's either that simply the Spanish court etiquette, and on the left side was the menu, which came in handy because there were between 9 and 13 courses. Or
9 and 13
between
courses.
9 and 13 courses. It might have been, I don't like the chicken, I wait for the fish. I don't like the fish, I wait for the beef.
Oh, so they wouldn't have to eat each course.
Maybe a bit.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Each course begins and ends when the emperor puts up the cutlery and puts it away. But he was polite enough to look around. Everything finished? Everybody eating? Not right.
Right.
He was polite enough to do that. So maybe this table is reconstructed based on a photograph, and the photograph might be from a banquet for Wilhelm II, Emperor of Prussia. And he had a disability in the left arm, so due to that, they put everything on the right side. Might be. For each course, they had different glasses for champagne, red and white wine, the schnapps for digestion and everything, and also water. Between each course, they put opened these bottles, butlets and everything, with rose water inside. So the smell of the fish goes away and leaves room for the salad. And each, I guess, had a tablecloth in a special fold. This fold was only allowed to be with the emperor on the table, and it's still used for state banquet with the president on it. It's the emperor's fold. It's around 1 square meter big tablecloth, and only 2 ladies today know how to fold it.
Wow.
There's no written information about it. They only tell each other when one of them retires. It's the biggest secret of the
Wow.
So not every culture.
Huh.
So a dinner with the emperor between 9 and 13 courses still didn't last quite long, because if you get up at 3:30 in the morning, you go to bed at 9:30 the latest. So a banquet with the emperor only lasted about 45 minutes.
Wow. For 13 courses?
Yeah, you had to be a quick eater, and the portions were quite small. It was more about be seen and see people and be in contact with them than really fill your hunger. And you weren't allowed to say no. You had to show a doctor's note if you were ill to get it, be excused or not be in Vienna. That's the
Wow.
only 2 excuses to give to not be here when you're invited.
Wow.
So they say it's a family banquet, but still a lot of rules for a family banquet.
Right?
Better show up.
Yeah. And you would imagine if I sit there, I never have a chance to inherit the throne. Never say never, because the grandnephew inherited the throne. We are finished now. If you have any question left, of course. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Have a nice night.
We appreciate it.
Just take up a little basket.
I thought that was water from far away. It's net. Depends on what they serve. Huh? Where'd your mom go? This is the cathedral in Vienna, in the main square. Hold on one sec. Go a little bit to the left for just a minute. Quite large.